when you start a distillery, let's go through the math real quick. $4 million is out the door. $4 million, and that's just to build the facility. I mean, we really haven't talked about branding yet. So that $4 million we talked about earlier, that we just knew we wanted to build a whiskey distillery. We had an identity crisis. We didn't even know what we were going to call ourselves at that stage. And then you got to, I bet we spend $8 on marketing for every dollar of whiskey that we make. So $4 million is out the door. Let me ask you this question. We have white whiskey coming off the still, which I don't know that's going to be any good in 4 years. That's faith. That's what the engineer is telling you. Have you ever, this is the question for you, have you ever gone to a bar and asked a bartender for a moonshine cocktail?
Never.
No, nobody does.
No.
I mean, it's like something you would buy when you go to a local distillery. You buy the new make because you're there and it's $20 and you'll put it on your shelf, but you'll never drink it. You might have some on your tasting or something like that, but that's about as far as it goes. So from a business standpoint, I'm not going to make money by selling, $20 here and there to customers that come through. They want the brown stuff. They want the aged stuff. So then you have to go out and find aged product on the market. And it's got to be the same aged product. You can't have this hodgepodge of different distilleries, ages, and mash bills. So you find that. Because if you don't have that for your cash flow, it's a big, fat goose egg zero. $4 million out the door with zero cash flow coming in. And it costs, back then it was $40,000 a month to operate the business, between employees and making the whiskey, plus the $4 million out the door with no cash flow. Nothing. So you've got to go find that product, and then that product will last you until yours is ready after 4 or 5 years. 6 years after you sign the building contract. It's really 6 years until your product's ready, maybe 7. So the consumer gets used to having a source product like ours was from the old Seagram's facility, or MGP today, and then when our whiskey's released, it tastes a little different. Everybody knows that. And then I'll get on some other nuances with marketing that we've had to switch along the way. But that's sort of a long way around the barn.
So explain how you make how do you make bourbon?
Oh, bourbon's easy. It's not rocket science, truthfully. So bourbon, think of it like we all have kitchens in our homes, so we can all identify with that. We have a kitchen, and if you want to make, let's say, chicken soup, right? You need a pot. So you have to have a stove, and you have to have a pot. You have to have liquid, which is either going to be water with a bouillon cube, or it's going to be chicken broth you bought at the store. And then as you continue on, you're probably going to put things like carrots and onions and celery as your base, and maybe some garlic, and you got to have chicken. And then you got to ask yourself, do you want noodles? Do you want this or that? And then you start building a different recipe, because like your grandma's chicken noodle soup and mine aren't the same.
But it's still chicken noodle soup.
Still chicken noodle soup, though. It's like bourbon. They're all just a little bit different. So how do you make bourbon? Bourbon, at the end of the day, as long as you have your kitchen, which is your distillery, and you have all the right pieces of cooking equipment, your pots and your pans and all that stuff, and your ingredients, what we do, we have corn. We make really 2 kinds of bourbon. We make a 21% rye bourbon and a 21% wheat bourbon. What does that mean? It means that 75% of the recipe is corn, 21% is rye or wheat, and then the rest is malted barley. So we bring those in as whole grains, so whole kernels of corn, whole kernels of rye and malted barley, and we weigh that out to a certain percentage, and then we send it through a hammer mill, which is basically a device that turns the whole grain into flour. So you take that like Indian corn in the fall, something like that, right? You can't eat it. It'll break your teeth. So or popcorn before you pop it, you can't eat that stuff. But you grind it up and you make a flour out of it. You take that flour and then you cook it, right? So you cook it for a period of time, and you take the starches and convert them to sugars, a lot like if you have a fresh piece of corn on the cob that you just picked off somebody's farm. If you bite into it, it's got that bittery, starchy taste.
Until you cook it.
Yeah, until you cook it. Then it gets sweet. Same thing. So you cook it. Once the grains are cooked and you've converted the starches to sugars, then you put them in a fermentation tank, just another tank. You fill the tank up. You put some yeast in it. You let it go on for 2 or 3 days, and then all of those sugars get eaten by the yeast, and they convert into alcohol. And then how do you make the whiskey from there? Then you put it in the still. We have a pot still, and you have to separate the alcohol from everything else. So there's a lot of waste in the whiskey business. So everything I just said, 3/4 of that is waste. It goes in the trash can. And then 25% of it goes, into making whiskey.
And it comes out as a clear liquid, a clear alcohol.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which that's a moonshine.
Yeah.
So if we were back in the woods, I'm sure where some of my heritage came from, right? The stills they make, that's moonshine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so how does it become brown? What do we do to make it brown?
So in the whiskey world, 100% of the color, okay, so follow me, 100% of the color and 70% of the flavor comes from the barrel. It's a charred new American oak barrel. So it comes off the still white. Looks like water. Clear water, a bottle of water. That's what it looks like. When you put it into that barrel, it turns brown like a beautiful, delicious bourbons that you have in the studio here. So 100% of the color comes from the barrel, and then about 70% of the flavor.
And then you don't mess with it. There's not any tinting. There's no dyes that are put in for the most part.
Well, when it comes to whiskey, how do I describe this?
See, now we're talking about our Tennessee folks.
Right. So do you mess with it? Well, Mother Nature's a woman you don't mess with. So you take that barrel of whiskey and you stick it away in your warehouse for you're really not going to see it again for another 5 or 6 years. Now, when is it ready? That's a great question. Have you ever been inside? Have you ever been with your significant other and they're getting ready? You're getting ready to go out to dinner. Or you have a deadline you have to meet. You're going to a party or an event or something. Have you ever asked your significant other? Have you ever said, "Hurry up"?
I would never do.
Is that a good idea to tell your wife or significant other, "Hurry up"?
You're setting yourself up for a bad night.
You got it, man. Try telling that to Mother Nature because she's not going to listen either. And she's ready when she's ready.
Yeah.